I'm Emily and welcome to the Pepper Knits Knitting Podcast. I am a knitter based in Perth in Western Australia, and thank you for joining me for episode 16. This is somewhat of a special episode because October marks a whole year since I posted my very first podcast episode, and I thought that would be worth acknowledging and celebrating. So thank you to everyone who subscribes, watches the videos, leaves comments. I love reading through everyone's comments and makes me feel like I'm actually talking to people who want to listen to me talk about my knitting and not just ramble on to people in my real life who don't really know what I'm talking about. I thought it would be fun to commemorate a whole year of the podcast by doing a little Q&A. I haven't been organized enough to gather questions to answer them in this episode. I thought it would be a good opportunity now to leave any questions that you have in the comments of this video, and then I can answer them in the next podcast. So if there's anything you would like to know about me, it can be anything knitting related or personal. I don't really share a lot of my personal life on the channel. I don't know if that is very interesting. I don't think I have the most exciting life outside of knitting, but if there is anything that you'd like to know, leave a comment with the question and then I will save them up for the next video and do a little Q&A segment in that one. So let's get on into the actual knitting content of today's episode. My first finished object is my Salty Days sweater, and I won't go into too many details on this because I actually filmed a project vlog for this whole sweater, and it was the first time I had done a project vlog. I had a lot of fun filming it and putting it all together, so if you haven't watched that one yet, I go through all of the making process and all of the hurdles that I had to overcome in that project. But I will share it now in case you haven't seen it and just quickly go over some of the details. So here is the finished sweater, and I'm very happy that it is finally off the needles. If you watched that vlog, you know that I had so many issues with getting the sleeves to fit properly, but eventually I did get there, and I'm really glad that I took the time to make them exactly how I wanted it to fit because I have been getting quite a lot of wear out of this. We have been getting some warmer weather, especially in the afternoon, so I find that I mostly wear this in the mornings or in the evenings when it's a little bit cool. Because this is knit at a fairly loose gauge and the lace means that it's quite airy, I find that it's pretty good for regulating temperature. The wool doesn't get too hot and itchy when I'm throwing it on when it's not a super chilly day. The yarns that I used for this sweater are two strands held together. So the main strand is the John Arbon Devonia 4-ply in the color Devonia Cream, and I held it with this really beautiful speckled lace yarn from Hedgehog Fibres. It is their Merino lace base, and I was a bit unsure about how these yarns would look together, but now it's in a finished sweater. I think it looks really cool and a very unique piece that I think adds a very different look to this sweater. Most of the ones that I have seen on Ravelry and Instagram are knit in solid colors, which was very tempting to do because they look amazing. But I had the yarn and I really wanted to participate in the knit along that I knitted this as a part of, so I ended up going for it. I'm really happy I ended up doing that. So as I just said, this was knit as part of a KAL hosted by Morgan Unraveled and Hayley Space, and the knit along is still running until the end of November, so you still have time to cast on and join in if you don't want to miss out. I think there are still being people added to the chat every week who are yet to cast on, so there's no rush. It's a very informal, relaxed KAL, and yeah, it was really fun to participate and see everyone's versions coming along. So my main issue with the sleeves is that they were way too tight and they were just unbalanced with the look of the body of the sweater. In the end, I did just omit all of the decreases that are in the sleeve, so it is meant to be a bit more of a tapered sleeve. I also picked up more stitches for the sleeve. I went up basically a size in the pattern. So the body is knit at the first size and then the sleeves are kind of like the second size but without the decreases. The other thing that I did at the bottom of the sleeve is I ended up omitting the chart C, which is this diamond lace section here. I originally knit the sleeves with it on and did the eyelet rows and everything and did the ribbing. It had a really odd balloon shape, like it would go out like this, just with the gauge difference I think of the twisted rib, this ribbing and the lace was really different for me, and I just didn't really like how it looked. This was not my idea. I saw Lynn from Nookmori on Instagram did this for her sleeves, and I just completely stole her idea because I think it looked really good in her version, and I'm really glad I ended up doing that as well. The one thing I would change about this sweater is that the bottom hem I think is a little bit too tight. It might just also be a combination of that with the length of the sweater, and where it falls on my hips is kind of at my widest point. So I feel like sometimes it will bunch up a little bit awkwardly, especially in the back. It's not uncomfortable at all to wear, and I don't really notice it. It was only when I was filming some clips of me wearing this that I noticed how bad it looked, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go back in and fix it. I am just trying to let go of perfection when it comes to garment knitting. So the ribbing for the body is meant to be knit on 3mm needles. I already went up to a 3.5 just so I wouldn't have too much cinching, but I think that I could have probably gone up to a 4 even, and potentially if it really starts to bother me and I notice it a lot, I might go back in and redo the ribbing. But yeah, for now I'm getting plenty of wear out of it as it is. It might grow a little bit as I wear it anyway. So that is my Salty Days sweater. It is designed by Veronika Lindberg, also known as Katova Kika. It was the first time I had knit one of her designs and I quite enjoyed it. I think some people struggled a little bit with the way that some of the instructions were worded, but I feel like as a designer it's probably very difficult to word instructions in a way that every single person will understand the first time they read it. So I would probably knit another one of her patterns. I think some of them aren't as size inclusive as this one, even though I feel like this one could have had a few improvements as well, which I spoke about at the end of my project vlog. But yeah, there's not much more I want to say about this that I haven't already covered in that vlog. So if you would like to knit your own one and participate in the KAL, you can definitely still join in now. My next finished object is something that I did finish quite a while ago. I think I finished these in August, but I haven't been able to show them on the podcast yet because they were a secret test knit. I can finally show to you my Cassandra socks. This is a free pattern that has just been released by Laura from Sunday Morning Knits. Because I finished these in August, I have been wearing them a little bit already, so they are a tiny bit grubby, so I won't bring them up too close and show you the dirt on them, but I have taken some photos of them before I wore them. This is a beautiful cabled sock pattern, and I really love the braided cable that runs down the front of the sock. I think this adds so much interest to the sock when you're wearing it and knitting it, because the back side and the bottom of the foot is all stockinette. I feel like these went by super quickly. I wasn't even working on these exclusively, and I feel like I just sat down for like a couple of hours and then almost had a whole sock finished. The other thing I really love about this sock is this folded cuff. I have never seen that on a sock before and never knit it in a sock, and I love how it looks. I think it's super elegant and understated, and it also really allows the focus to be on the beautiful cable at the front. I thought that this might cause the sock to fall down a little bit more than when you do a regular ribbed cuff, but I haven't found that I've had any issues. I think because the leg length is fairly generous, it sits high up enough on a wider part of my leg that I haven't had any issues with it falling down. As you can see, I knit mine in 2 different colors. So I knit the main color. The purple is also from Hedgehog Fibres. It is the twist sock base in the color Ghost, and the contrast is a mini from Dying to Knit, and I think it's just an undyed mini that I had in stash. I think the pattern is designed to be used with 2 minis, and you can do a contrast toe with the other color. I only had these 2 that I could pair together that I liked the color combination of, so I ended up just doing the toe in the purple as well. I would have really loved to have done it in the undyed mini, but I just didn't have enough to squeeze out 2 of the toes as well. So I believe this pattern has been released in collaboration with Paisley Knits, and I think you can buy kits from her Taylor Swift collection to make these socks. This pattern comes in quite a few sizes from memory. I can't remember exactly what size I made. I think it would have been the 2nd size, but I will always leave my Ravelry linked, and I have a project for these on my Ravelry, so it will tell you exactly what size I knit. So if you're looking for a free sock pattern that is nice and easy but has a little bit of interest, I would really recommend going for the Cassandra socks. Laura also has a few other free sock patterns on her Ravelry, so if you like the style of these, I think you will also enjoy the style of her other sock patterns. It's also a great way to be able to use up some mini skeins for sock yarn. So my last finished object I don't have here with me to show you. It was the Sunday morning baby romper that I knit for our next door neighbour who is expecting her first baby at the end of December. And I finished that shortly after filming the last podcast. I think I was pretty close to being done. I just had some of the ribbing and the sleeves to finish, and I ended up doing that fairly quickly. Like I said, I did end up omitting the buttonholes on the bottom where you close it off, and I ended up putting some metal poppers there instead, which were a bit of a struggle to get on at first, but I ended up getting them on. I feel like they were a lot more secure and also easier to undo and do up than buttons would be. So I ended up knitting it in some scrap cotton yarn that I purchased from Spotlight a really long time ago. I wasn't 100% sure of the composition, but I was fairly sure it was either 100% cotton or a cotton and acrylic blend. I did end up throwing it through my own washing machine with a load of clothes just to check that it would be okay to machine wash, and it came out completely fine. None of the poppers came undone and it didn't shrink or anything, so at least I could give it to her and say it's fine to machine wash. I would feel so bad if she ended up machine washing it and it shrunk or something happened and she couldn't actually get any use out of it. Just got an email, but I don't think it's urgent, so we can continue talking about knitting instead. This is a good transition into works in progress. I have kind of a whip, kind of an FO, but I have two mismatched Saskie socks off the needles, and I have just this morning cast on the next of the blue pair. So I'm knitting one pair of Saskie socks for each of my cousins, and I'm knitting one of these in this beautiful brown color and the other one in this baby blue as per their requests. I've knit myself a pair of Saskie socks last year or so. They were in a similar color to this, but they were in a different yarn. I knit mine in Cascade Heritage, and for these pairs I'm using the Opal 4-ply sock yarn. This is the yarn that I'm using. I much prefer this yarn for colorwork than the Heritage. The Cascade Heritage was really soft and smooth, so I feel like the colorwork stitches didn't really mesh together very well. This one I feel like is giving a lot better effect on the colorwork, and it feels a little bit more sturdy. It's not rustic, it's still soft and it is a superwash yarn, but I just feel like these ones will hold up a little bit better and the colorwork just looks a little bit neater. Could also be that I am improving my colorwork knitting, so I like to think that that has a little bit to contribute to how much better this pair looks than the ones I knit a year ago. So the pair that I knit for myself, I had a little bit of an issue with the fit. I think I ended up knitting them on 2.5mm needles instead of 2.25, but I have since been experimenting with my colorwork knitting, and I've been knitting these also on a 2.25mm needle as per the pattern recommends. I have gone up to 72 stitches for both of these pairs, but you might be able to tell that one of them is significantly bigger than the other one. It's quite a bit longer and also wider, and you can definitely tell in the colorwork on the foot. This one is just knit significantly looser, and I only just realized that as I had finished the toe on this one. I don't really want to have to go back and change them. I think I'm just going to have to block them out to be a similar size, and I think as long as I knit the matching pair to be the same, I think as long as I knit the second one to be the same size, then it won't be an issue. I think it would be really annoying to have one sock way tighter than the other, but if they're both the same and they're equally as tight or as loose, then might not be too annoying to wear. This is definitely a product to knit. I have to say I'm not loving working on these. The colorwork on the leg is actually really fun, and I find this goes by really quickly, but doing the foot does seem a little bit tedious, and it feels like it does go a lot slower. The heel on these is an afterthought heel, so that is kind of another annoying step that you have to go back in and add the heel, even though you're pretty much done with the sock. I am trying to add the heel straight after I finish the toe, just so I know it's not going to linger there and not get done until the very end when I have 4 heels to do. But I really love these color combinations. I think especially the blue was really fun to knit because I would never knit something for myself in this color. So I've almost finished the ribbing on the second blue sock, and then hopefully this one won't take me too long. It's been a while since these were put on the needles and I haven't really been picking them up too much, which I think has contributed to my difference in gauge. So I suppose that's what I get for leaving it so far in between finishing socks, that my gauge has just changed. But I think I'm going to knit the second blue one whilst I still remember how tight I was knitting, and then try and just be conscious of being a little bit looser when I knit the second brown sock. This is a pattern by the Petite knitter, which I don't think I mentioned, but I know that a lot of you have really loved the Saskie socks. Some people have commented that they have cast on and been knitting their own, so I'm really glad that you also love this sock pattern. My next work in progress is kind of on hold a little bit. I have made a little bit of progress and I do have some things that I think I just need to voice out loud to make some decisions on. So I'm talking about my Maria sweater. This is an absolutely beautiful design by Claudia from Unit Toronto. I was very kindly gifted the pattern to share about their new book called Memory Lane, which is now available for purchase. I'm knitting this in the Juniper Moon Farm Herriot Fine, which is 75% alpaca and 25% nylon, and it is so incredibly soft. Every time I pull this out, I just want this finished so I can wear it because I love how it feels. And I love the colors I chose as well. This reddy brown color is called Mahogany, and it's not something I would typically go for, but I love how it looks with the gray. The gray is called Travertine, I believe. At the end, the colorwork will also have some beads added to it, which I'm super excited about doing, but I want to finish the sweater first as a little bit of motivation that I get to then add the beads. Also, then I just know the overall look of the sweater and I can pick out beads and sew them on as I think looks good. So last episode, I think I had pretty much knit one of the sleeves and knew I had to rip it out because it was super tight and yeah, it just was not going to be wearable. I think I'd also blocked it at that point, so there was absolutely no way that it was going to fit. So since then, obviously I have re-knit some of the sleeve. This is the 3rd time I have knit this sleeve, which is kind of frustrating, and I think that's what's put me off wanting to work this, because if I've knit 3 sleeves by now I should have a finished sweater, but no, I'm still going on the first sleeve. It's been a little while since I have tried this on, so let me put it on and then we can make some decisions on what we do next. Okay, so here is the sleeve and it's actually fitting pretty well. The underarm here is a little bit on the snug side, but I'm not about to rip out the whole body and redo that. It's not uncomfortable at all. It's just a little bit more snug, I think, than some of the typical sweaters that I've been wearing, but it kind of just feels like a t-shirt would sit, so I think it should be okay. But yeah, the sleeve feels really good now and I think it should be okay. I've been doing the tapered decreases as per the pattern and I feel like it's going okay. I think from memory I was thinking about omitting some of the decreases, but I feel like I shouldn't have to do that. I don't want it to have a weird shape. I feel like if I do some decreases and then skip some others, it will have like a weird shape like this. So I would rather it be like fully tapered like that. I think I should be okay to keep doing the decreases. Like I still have a good amount of room in the sleeve. So the reason that I had stopped working on this was because I wasn't going to have enough yarn. This is all I have left to knit one of the sleeves, and I have the same amount again for the other sleeve, but I really don't think this is going to be enough to finish this one sleeve. So this ended up just sitting in a bag and not getting worked on because I knew that I was gonna not have enough yarn. I have since ordered one more skein of the grey and it is on its way to me now. I'll probably only need a little bit of that skein, but because it is a sock yarn, I think these would make beautiful, super luxurious and soft house socks to wear. I have quite a decent amount of the Mahogany colorway left as well, so I think these would look really nice together paired as a colorwork sock. But of course I need to finish those Saskie socks first before I even consider that. But yeah, it's good that I have a project in mind or some kind of use that I can use for the leftovers once I finally finish this. There is also a tiny bit more color work on the cuff as well, which I think is a really nice little detail for this sweater. Now that I have this on, I really want to finish it. I was thinking that it was going to be way too warm to wear, but now that I have this on, and even though it's over another t-shirt, it's actually not overheating me too much. It's a fairly warm day today. I think it's like 28, 29 degrees Celsius. If I hurry up and get this done fairly soon, I might manage to squeeze a few wears out of it before next winter comes around. I didn't actually tell you what I had done differently for this sleeve versus the other two attempts. So pretty much I have gone up a needle size and also a size in the pattern to give myself more room. My gauge for the other two versions was quite a bit smaller, and I have noticed that sleeves are just my issue. I always seem to knit them quite tightly, especially when I'm working in a magic loop or just small circumference knitting. I tend to tighten up. So for the body, I knit the size 2 on 2.75mm needles. For these sleeves, I have gone up to the size 4 in the pattern and also gone up to a 3.25mm needle, just to be extra sure that I would definitely have enough room in the sleeves. I've just come to learn that tight fitting sleeves are really not my thing. I would much prefer having a looser and more open sleeve. So once that extra skein finally comes in, I will continue working on this. Even though I do have a little bit of yarn left now, I just want to check that the extra skein is the same dye lot as what I currently have. I wasn't able to buy more from the same place because they had sold out of this color. So hopefully it is the same dye lot or very similar. If it's not, then I'm just going to have to alternate skeins, and that's why I want to hold off just in case I need to blend in the new skein with what I currently have. I keep saying it, but this picot neckline is definitely one of my favorite features of the sweater. I'm really looking forward to getting this one off the needles and into my wardrobe. So my last work in progress is the one that has been getting the most amount of love lately. I am knitting another Lunan Polo. I test knit this for Rebecca and it was coming to the end of winter / autumn here, so I knit myself a long sleeve version in the Filcolana Arvetta. This is intended to be more of a summery design, so I knew that I would want to make another one coming into the warmer weather in a more summer appropriate fibre and also with the short sleeves. So I'm knitting this in, I think, 100% cotton. So I bought this yarn from an op shop recently and I got a pretty decent sized bag for only $8. It does come in these tiny little balls and I've only just broken into this, so there are so many ends in this, and I think the construction as well, you're breaking the yarn a lot, so that hasn't helped with having so many ends to deal with. But yeah, that's going to be fun having to weave all of those in at the end. I will just say now, the white colour is not going to stay white. It is definitely getting over dyed. When I showed this in acquisitions in a previous episode, I did contemplate that I would probably over dye this, and yeah, I am definitely going to. This bright white is just not really for me, I don't think. There are also just some like random spots of dirt that were in the yarn already. To be fair, some of them could also be me. Some of them look suspiciously like a chocolate stain, so I thought if I can't even keep this clean as I'm knitting it, there's no way it's going to stay white like this once I start to wear it. I'm going to put this on some try-on tubing so I can actually try it on and you can see how it looks a little bit better. It's one of those ones that's a bit hard to show just holding up like this, especially with the collar. I feel like it looks way better when it's on. I am knitting this in the first size on the recommended needles, which is 2.75mm. There is a 4-ply and an 8-ply version of this pattern, and you can also do just a regular like round crew neck, which I also think looks really good, but I really love how the polo collar looks. The collar does use up quite a bit of yarn, and it took so long to knit as well. I think because it's on cotton and I did go down another needle size to work the collar and all of the double knitting, it was, yeah, a little bit hard wearing on my hands, so I felt like I should be taking a lot of regular breaks, which I'm glad I did because my hands haven't suffered too much through knitting it. I'm glad that I went and just attached the collar like pretty much straight away after I had joined in the round for the body, just so I could kind of like get it out of the way, and then also because it uses quite a bit of yarn, and I could be sure that whatever I had left I could just allocate to the sleeves and the rest of the body. So like I said, I would probably not keep this white. I'm kind of thinking I might go like a chocolate brown color. I think because my home cardigan that I over dyed was like the first successful dyeing project that I'd had, so I have in my mind that brown will work well. I also just generally like wearing brown, so maybe that color, but then I also feel like that's not super summery. So then I was thinking I should try something different, maybe a pink or something. I don't know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what color you think that I should dye it. I think because it is such a blank canvas, like it is just a pure white, any color I choose should take onto it pretty well, but I do have some swatches so I can at least test it on a swatch before I dunk the whole thing in a dye. Okay, it's on the try on tubing now. Here is what I've got so far. I think it's looking super cute. I really love this color. I have made a few modifications to this version compared to my last one. So when I'd finished my first one, I just noticed that the back neck was sitting quite low on me. No one else seemed to have that issue, so I think that's just a me problem and the way that my body is shaped. A fun fact about me is that I do have scoliosis, so I don't know how much that affects the fit of garments on me. But yeah, I just noticed that the back neck was sitting super low and I really wanted to try and fix that in this version. In that one, I also found that there was a bit of bunching in like the front yoke section here. So I thought that might be my clue on how I can fix that for this version. I did end up taking some length out of these panels. I didn't really have any rhyme or reason to how I did that. I just kind of cut short where I was knitting. Like if it said to knit to so many centimeters, I would just take off like half a centimeter or 1 centimeter here or there for each part of the shaping in the front, and I just made sure to do the same on both sides. But yeah, I didn't really have any like specific way of doing that. I was a bit worried that that might completely screw up the whole construction and the fit, but now that it's on and it's all together, I think that it actually worked out okay. Let me show you the back neck, and hopefully it actually is looking okay. The collar does sit a little bit funny at the moment and you do need to fiddle with it when it's blocking, but here is how the back neck looks. It feels okay, so hopefully it doesn't look atrocious. I guess I'll find that out when I go to edit this video. Because I took out some length in the front yoke section here, that has meant that this placket is a little bit shorter than it's intended to be. The collar is quite a bit wider, I think, than what it's supposed to be as well. And I'm not sure if that is because I was trying to be a bit loose at my tension here just so I didn't completely hurt my hands when I was doing all of this double knitting. To be fair, I did also add, I think, 2 extra rows into this collar because I did want it to be a little bit longer, but I feel like this is just a little bit too long. If I have it folded up like this, I think that this is okay. It's just when it folds open like this that I think it looks kind of unbalanced, and yeah, I don't really love how this looks. So I'm gonna hope that blocking can kind of fix this and just see how it looks after it's been wet blocked. I don't know, but I feel like this side looks longer than this side. But I knit them the same because you just knit it in one piece. So I don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, I'm just gonna leave the collar for now. I may have to go back in and take some length out. But because it's double knitting, I have never had to like pick up stitches in double knitting and rip back before. So I'm not really looking forward to doing that. It might just be one of those things that actually isn't as hard as you think it's going to be. So I'm going to hope that that's the case if I have to go back and take some length out of this. I think as well when I add the sleeves, because it is a drop shoulder, that might help kind of bring this out, and this might want to fall in a little bit more. I don't know, I think I'm just going to knit the whole garment and then go back on the collar and make a decision about it. So I am being cautious of not doing really long stints of working on this just because this cotton is a little bit stiff. It's not a scratchy cotton or anything. I feel like it is pretty soft against skin, and definitely as I'm knitting it and have been scrunching it up and throwing it in a project bag and moving it around, I feel like it's already starting to soften up quite a bit. So that gives me a little bit more hope that as I wear this and wash this garment, it will continue to soften as well. I'll be honest and say that when I cast this on, I was kind of thinking that I might end up ripping it out and not want to use this yarn in this project. I was originally thinking about using this in a 9 p.m. tank or some kind of fitted summery top. I didn't think it would be a great yarn to use in something that's intended to be more drapey or flowy, so I thought something more fitted would be better, like a tank top. But I had a pretty decent amount of this yarn, and I didn't know what else I would do with it after I had made a tank top. Because the Lunan, and especially the Polo version, uses quite a bit of yarn, I thought that whilst I had this yarn, I may as well give it a go and see if I like it. And yeah, so far I think it's going well. I'm pretty sure at this point I am just going to keep going with this. So as you can see, this is all of the body that I've done so far before I went back and added the collar. So I think I'll just keep going and knit on the body now until that's done. Maybe I'll add the sleeves before then, just so I'm 100% sure that I'll have enough yarn to do the sleeves. And also they're super short sleeves, so it won't take very long. They have some really nice short row shaping to shape a sleeve cap in them as well. So yeah, maybe I'll finish this bit of the ball for the body, then add the sleeves, and then I know whatever I have left, I can finish up the body. I'm fairly sure I should have a pretty decent amount because I did weigh it and kind of estimate the meterage that I had, and I should have plenty. I am kind of thinking that it might be like a crochet thread or something for like doilies or yeah, something like that. It has quite a high twist to it, and it feels to me like 100% cotton. So I don't really know exactly what this is meant for. It's kind of weird also that it's in such tiny like bowls like this. So yeah, it has been really fun to get a summer project onto the needles. I don't really have any plans at the moment for any more summer knitting. I'm sure as it starts to warm up even more, I will be a bit more inspired to do that. At the moment, I'm not super inspired by any of the summer knits that I have done last year, and there are some of them that I'm considering adding to my pile of rip out and re-knit. I haven't actually committed to doing that for any of them yet. I'm going to see if I do start to reach for them a little bit more, but yeah, some of them are on the pile potentially of getting frogged and reclaiming the yarn, just because I feel like it's a shame to have that yarn sitting in a project that's not actually getting worn. I just think there's some improvements I can make to some of those projects that would mean I would get a lot more wear out of them. I'll save that for another podcast episode because I do have some acquisitions and plans that I want to share today. So speaking of projects that I want to reclaim the yarn on, I have finally ripped out my no frills sweater. I knit that a couple of years ago now in the Knitting for Olive Merino and soft silk mohair in the colours Dusty Artichoke. I don't think I wore that once over the last winter, and yeah, there are a few reasons for that. I go into that a lot more in the Projects I Want to Frog video that I uploaded a few months ago, but I finally got around to frogging that, and I'm really excited to put that yarn into a better project. So one of the reasons I didn't really get any wear out of that sweater was because I don't really like the feeling of the mohair against my skin. And I already mentioned in that video that I wanted to knit it into a Semper cardigan v-neck, which is a design by Sophie from the Knit Pearl Girl. So yeah, I have frogged that yarn completely out of that sweater, and I have even washed it and dried it and re-caked it into balls, and I didn't separate the mohair from the merino. I've heard you're supposed to do that, but yeah, that was going to take me way too long. I feel like that's just asking for a tangled mohair mess, so I didn't want to take the risk, and I feel like it should be okay. I have swatched already with the yarn, like wound together, and it was fine. So I think as long as I keep my tension pretty even on the yarn, it should be okay. So here is the swatch that I have knit for the Semper cardigan. The recommended needle size is a 4.5 for I think a 21 stitch gauge, but I just knew that I would need to go down to get that kind of gauge. So I went to a 4mm needle instead and managed to hit gauge. So I'm really looking forward to casting on another cardigan. It's something I definitely feel like is lacking in my wardrobe, which is also why I have swatched for another cardigan as well. So I purchased one ball of this pink Chaska Acru lace yarn a few months ago to do some swatching for a potential wedding cardigan. In the end, I did decide to go for white for that cardigan, which I will show in a second, but it did mean that I had one ball of these sitting around and I wasn't sure what to do with it. I ended up swatching with a different white yarn. So the main strand in this is Bendigo Willamills Luxury 4-ply in the colour Snow. So my plan for this is to knit a cognac cardigan, which is designed by Marin from Atelier Cassandra, and I love how these yarns feel together. It's knit at a fairly loose gauge, so you get a really nice soft and airy fabric, and I think it will be perfect to have a pink fluffy cardigan like that in my wardrobe. So I ended up picking up a second ball of the lace yarn just so I would have enough to finish the cardigan, and I've ordered one more ball of the Bendigo Wooler Mills yarn just so I would also have enough to use up with the scraps that I had already in my stash. This yarn is so soft. I'm not a mohair person, as I've mentioned many times before, but this is 75% baby Surrey and 25% mulberry silk, and it is really soft. They come in 50-gram balls and you get 420 meters per ball. So I purchased 5 balls in the white color as well, and I want to hold this with some Knitting for Olive merino that I bought maybe a month or so ago from Calico and Ivy. This is in the color Snowflake. I haven't swatched with these two yet. This is going to be for my wedding cardigan, and I'm not exactly sure on the pattern I'm going to go with just yet. Originally, I was thinking the late summer wrap, or one of the wrap cardigans from Knitting for Olive, but I haven't completely settled on that just yet. Rebecca, who designed the Lunan tee, and I have knit so many of her designs, she is currently in the process of writing up a pattern for the Cara wrap, and I think it's currently in testing. I think from memory it's due to be released at the end of the year, so I'd still have plenty of time to knit that one up. So I think I might wait until more details come out about that one before I swatch and make a final decision. This is definitely more of a creamy white than the white of the Knitting for Olive, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how the two colors blend together when it's knit up. To be honest, I don't think it's something I'm actually going to get a lot of wear out of on my wedding day, but I think it will be nice to have it for getting ready or wearing for other bridal events, or just having a white cardigan I think will be a good addition to my wardrobe. There is also another piece of knitwear in this household that is not safe from being frogged and having the yarn reclaimed. I don't think this has ever been shown on the channel before, but I knit my boyfriend this humongous hefty zipper sweater man maybe a couple of years ago, and he has barely worn this, and I don't blame him for that. I don't think it is the best sweater I have ever knit, and yeah, the fit on him is not great. It's also like a super dense and heavy fabric. The gauge is probably just too tight for this yarn, and yeah, it's just not really a sweater that I would really see him wearing, and I don't really blame him for not wearing it. He's not someone generally who gets super cold, so I think having something like this is just not really practical for him to wear every day. He also wanted a shorter collar like this, but honestly I think it just looks kind of weird, especially when it's on. Like, it doesn't really look like a crew neck. Yeah, it just looks a little bit awkward when it's on. So yes, this one is definitely going to get frogged, and I have been thinking for a while about what I could make out of this instead. And we had a chat the other day, and I think he decided he just wants a plain crew neck sweater, no cables, nothing fancy. We both agreed that the gauge on this zipper sweater is way too tight and it's just too warm and not really necessary for where we live. So I did some swatching with some of the scraps I had left of this yarn. The first swatch I did on a 5mm needle, which I actually think is the same as the zipper sweater, but I am a much looser knitter now than I was a couple of years ago. On the 5mm now, I ended up with a 16 stitch gauge, but when we felt this fabric, it just seemed like it was a little bit too dense and would be worth going up another needle size. So I ended up doing it on a 5.5 and a 6mm as well. The 6mm it feels really nice, but I think it is just a little bit too loose and the stitches are just a little bit too big. It also lets like too much light through, so I think we settled on the 5.5 instead. So 5.5 I was getting a 15 stitch gauge, and this was a 14 stitch gauge. So I had a look on Ravelry at patterns that I could use that gauge for. I don't think I mentioned the yarn. This is Bendigo Wooler Mills Classic 12 ply, so it is a pretty hefty sized yarn. And the only reason I bought it was because I thought it would be good for a zipper sweater. I knit this before Petite had released the DK zipper sweater patterns, and if I was going to knit another zipper sweater now, it would definitely be the DK version. So after hunting a little bit on Ravelry, I was really struggling to find something that matched this gauge and matched the brief that I was given, because he wanted something, like I said, plain and also just like a nicely rounded neck. He didn't want something that would be like too wide. I think some of the raglans we were looking at had a bit more of like a rectangular square neckline, and yeah, he definitely wanted something that was like nicely scooped and round. So I ended up finding the Northland sweater by Petite Knit, which is a stockinette saddle shoulder pattern, but it is designed to be knit at 17 stitches. So because I'm at a 15 stitch gauge, I am going to have to do some pattern and gauge maths to get the right size sweater. So I have been given some garments that he likes the fit of, so I've measured the chest circumference of those, and I can use that as a reference for knitting the Northland sweater. I did purchase the pattern earlier today and did a little bit of gauge maths, and I think if I knit the size small at this gauge, I should end up somewhere between the large and the extra large, which will fall pretty much in between the size of the garments that I have been given as a reference. So hopefully all goes well. I've never done this before. I've always known, like in theory, how to change around the gauge of a pattern to match the gauge you're getting, but I've actually never done it in practice, and it would be nice if my gauge was completely consistent across the whole garment and versus my gauge swatch, but I feel like that's not actually going to happen. So I think I'll just do regular try-ons when I eventually cast this on. It is still going to be a really bulky 12 ply sweater, so it's definitely not a summery garment at all. I'm not sure when I'll get around to casting that on, but yeah, it has been fun to fiddle around with the gauge, and yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that on the needles at some point this year, maybe next year, but yeah, at least I have a use for the rest of this yarn in the back of my mind now. So I mentioned that I also bought some yarn from Bendigo Willow Mills for the cognac cardigan. I did also buy some of their, I think, luxury 8 ply to use as a sweet shop blanket. I bought a few balls in the white color to use as a main strand in the blanket. I have so many scraps that I just want to get used up. There's only so many socks and accessories that I want to knit that I feel like I can actually wear or give away. So I think a blanket would be a really fun way to use up a lot of scraps. I think it would be nice to be able to use up bits and pieces of previous projects and be able to remember those projects in a blanket, and then also of course be able to get those scraps out of my stash. That will definitely be a very long-term project. I can just slowly work on this blanket whenever I feel like it. So that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for watching until the end. As I said, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer in the next episode, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will save them up and answer them in the next podcast. I hope you've enjoyed watching and have gotten a little bit of work done on your projects. And thanks again for watching. Bye!